Good evening and welcome to Sleepy Night. I'm so glad you're here. Tonight we'll share another gentle story and helps your heart rest easy before sleep. So take a deep breath, find a comfortable spot, and let's begin. Hello there. If you're lying still, the blanket pulled up to your chest, and beyond the window only the gentle sound of rain remains, then this is the moment for us to listen to an old story together. A story without any drama, only the quiet warmth of something like coffee steam. Tonight, we'll listen to the story of Mr. William. A story that begins simply with a cup of coffee in a small cafe on the corner and a rainfall just long enough for someone to remember the warmest moments of their life. Now, close your eyes, let your shoulders soften, and let the rain lead us to where the air smells of freshly brewed coffee, where Mr. William is smiling softly to himself in a memory. It had just started to rain lightly when Mr. William stepped out of the clinic. He put on his old cap, opened his umbrella, and walked outside. The first drops of the season fell gently on his shoulders, carrying the scent of damp earth and the breeze of March. The sound of rain on the pavement seemed to slow the whole world. Cars eased their speed, passers-by shortened their steps, and only he stood there quietly in the middle of the small suburban town in Oregon. He opened the car door and a chill rushed in. For a moment, he saw his reflection in the window. Silver hair, eyes slightly sunken, and lips pressed together as if holding back something unsaid. He turned on the radio. Louis Armstrong's raspy, familiar voice filled the air. Mr. William chuckled softly and said to himself, "Raining again? Maybe it's a good night for a cup of coffee." It had been a long time since he'd gone out just for a cup of coffee. Back when Margaret was still alive, every time it rained, she would say, "On a day like this, it'd be a waste not to have a cup of hot coffee." Then she would put on her light blue raincoat, one hand holding the umbrella, the other slipping into his, a habit that never needed thinking about. Now only the umbrella remained, old but still clean, because he always took care of everything that once belonged to her. The road home ran along Maple Street, a street where autumn leaves would fall into golden carpets, and in winter, the lights from the windows would glow warm and soft like candlelight. But today, everything was drenched and quiet. The signs glimmered faintly through the rain, and each drop on the windshield reflected light, like memories slowly fading away. At the last turn of the street, he saw a wooden sign hanging slightly crooked. Rainy Corner Café, open late on rainy days. A small cafe sat quietly between an auto repair shop and a laundromat. Its glass door was fogged with steam, and from inside came a soft golden light. He couldn't remember how many times he'd passed by this place over the years, but he had never gone in. Maybe because back then he never felt the need to. But now there was a quiet space in his heart that made him want to stop somewhere just for a little while. He parked the car, folded his umbrella, and walked quickly through the fine drizzle. A small bell chimed as the door opened. That clear little sound reminded him of the wind chime Margaret used to hang on their porch. The smell of freshly roasted coffee filled the air, blending with warm wood and a hint of vanilla. The room was small, with only 5 or 6 tables, and the soft yellow light painted everything in a calm hue. Behind the counter stood a middle-aged woman, lightly curled hair, a kind face, and a beige apron around her waist. She was drying a glass, and when she saw him, she smiled. "Evening, sir. Rain got you, huh?" Her voice was low and warm, with a touch of humor. The kind of voice that made you trust someone right away. He smiled back, feeling something ease inside him. "Yeah, I guess the rain won this round." She chuckled, poured coffee from a steaming glass pot, and asked gently, "How do you like it? Black or with a little cream?" "Just a little cream, please." He chose a table by the window. Outside, the rain kept falling in fine silver threads. The streets were growing quieter. The glow of car lights reflected on the wet pavement like 1,000 melting stars. The music in the café softened autumn leaves, played on saxophone, slow and wistful, as if even time had stopped to listen. In front of him, a steaming cup of coffee. Its aroma drifted into the air like the breath of a memory. He cupped his hands around the mug, feeling the warmth seep gently into his joints, stiff and aching with age. Outside, raindrops tapped against the glass, tap, 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 slow and steady, like the ticking of a clock turning backward in time. He took a deep breath, then a small sip. The coffee tasted softly bitter, with a hint of cream, and a trace of vanilla that lingered like the breath of someone who had once passed through his life. A strange feeling, both familiar and distant, stirred gently in his chest. In that moment, Mr. William was no longer a 72-year-old man sitting alone on a rainy night. He was 30 again, wearing his old leather jacket, sitting in a small café with Margaret, and she was smiling, eyes crinkling behind her glasses, asking if he wanted more sugar. He had once thought those memories had cooled with the passing years. But it turned out, all it took was a little rain and a warm cup of coffee, and they came back tender, whole, and more alive than ever. The rain kept falling, and in the quiet space of the little cafe, he could hear the ticking of the clock, the soft drip of coffee, and somewhere farther away, a voice, gentle and familiar, seemed to call his name from memory. "William, it's raining again. Come inside. It's getting cold." He smiled. He wasn't sure if it was real or just a passing thought, but that voice still felt warm, still tender, as if it had never left him. And if you're still lying there listening to this story, why not close your eyes for a moment? Imagine yourself sitting in that little cafe. The rain has just stopped, and the scent of coffee still lingers in the air. The wooden chair feels a little warm. You can hear the faint ticking of a clock, and far away, the soft rustle of wind brushing against the window frame. Do you hear it? That feeling calm, weightless, as if time itself has paused for a while. Just like the old man in our story, we all have things to remember. But sometimes, all it takes is a cup of coffee and a gentle rain to let the heart grow quiet again and to see that life is still tender, still kind. Now then, let's keep listening to the story. The cafe owner sat down at the next table, a cup of hot tea in her hands. The warm light reflected in her eyes, calm and soft, like a lake in late autumn. "Do you live nearby?" she asked, her voice so gentle, as if she didn't want to disturb the peace of the rain. "Yes," he replied, "just a few blocks away. I live with my son. He's always busy, and I've got too much free time." He smiled, but the smile faded quickly, dissolving into the steam rising from his coffee. She smiled kindly, gave a small nod. "Coffee on rainy nights," she said, "is for those who no longer have to hurry." The words made him slow down. They echoed in his mind like an old melody, making his heart ache ever so slightly. Yes, he had stopped rushing long ago, since the day no one waited for him to come home, since the words "Welcome home" disappeared from his doorway. He looked out the window. Tiny raindrops clung to the glass, sliding down into faint trails before vanishing without a trace. The sight reminded him of an afternoon long ago, when Margaret, in her grey sweater, brewed a small pot of coffee, played a Nat King Cole record, and sat by the window with him. They didn't say much. They just listened to the rain. Now the rain still fell, but the one who used to listen beside him was gone. The house had grown so quiet, quiet enough that sometimes he thought he could hear time passing with every breath. The cafe owner stayed silent for a long while. Then, in a voice as soft as the rain, she said, "Maybe she's still sitting there, listening with you, just from another corner of the rain." He looked up. For some reason, her words made his throat tighten. A feeling both tender and sorrowful washed over him, as if someone had gently placed a hand on his shoulder. He smiled faintly, his eyes softening. Maybe so. Rain always knows how to lead us back to the past. The woman smiled. Some say rain is the language of memories. Only those who have loved deeply enough can hear what it says. Outside, the rain began to fall harder. Its sound blended with the soft jazz playing in the cafe, creating a strange rhythm, gentle yet tinged with melancholy. The few remaining customers left one by one, leaving behind a scattering of empty tables. The warm light reflected off the wooden floor, glimmering in puddled patches. The lady behind the counter stood up and brought him a small pot of coffee, setting it down on his table. Refills on the house. Rainy nights deserve a little warmth. He smiled softly, wrapping both hands around the cup as if to hold on to that warmth for just a little longer. "Have you been running this cafe for long?" he asked. She thought for a moment before replying, "About 10 years. I opened it after my husband passed away." She paused, her tone slowing as she added, He's the one who taught me how to roast coffee. Its scent is the one thing I could never let go of." He looked at her, understanding flickering in his eyes. A long silence followed, only the sound of rain, the ticking clock, and the faint hiss of rising coffee steam. The woman gazed toward the window, her eyes drifting somewhere far away. "You know," she said softly, "I've always believed that those who leave somehow find a way to stay. Maybe in the wind, in the smell of morning coffee, or hidden in an old song." He nodded slowly, a bittersweet feeling filling his chest like the lingering taste of the coffee he was still sipping. "She loved La Vie en Rose," he said. "Every time it played, she'd close her eyes, tap her fingers to the rhythm, and I'd just sit there watching her." The woman smiled gently. "How lucky," she whispered, "that your memories are still so whole." Then she chuckled softly and stood up. "In that case, tonight feels like the perfect night to brew another memory." She walked back to the counter, rummaged through an old wooden drawer, and took out a small brown paper bag tied with a thin twine string. "This one's special," she said. "I don't use it often. The beans are hand-picked. The flavor starts a little sharp on the tongue, then slowly turns sweet, kind of like people's memories." Her movements were slow, deliberate, almost like a quiet ritual. The sound of boiling water, the soft hiss as it touched the coffee grounds, and then that familiar, comforting aroma filled the little café. He watched her in silence. For a moment, everything felt so close, so familiar, as if he were home again. When she set the cup down before him, he lowered his head and inhaled deeply. That scent, rich and gentle, made him close his eyes. And in the darkness behind his eyelids, he saw himself and Margaret in their old kitchen, the warm light glowing, rain falling softly outside, and she was laughing. He opened his eyes. The rain was still falling, but this time he didn't feel sad anymore. The lady behind the counter turned back and smiled softly. "You look better now," she said. He nodded. "Thank you for letting me listen to the rain in a different way." "Are you still awake? If your eyes have started to close, just let them. Don't try to stay awake, because this story isn't something you have to understand. You just have to feel it as gently as the swirl of coffee after sugar dissolves. Outside your window, maybe there's a bit of rain falling too, and somewhere out there, perhaps a small cafe, its warm yellow light spilling softly onto the porch. Imagine yourself there, sitting in the warmth, listening to the rain tapping lightly, while the storyteller's voice hums softly, slowly. So let's continue our story. The woman brought out a slice of banana bread. "Homemade," she said. "Not too sweet, goes well with coffee." He smiled, thanked her, and took a small bite. That simple taste made him feel young again, like those days after work, stopping by a roadside cafe, waiting for his wife to pick him up in the rain. He smiled at the memory, bittersweet but warm. Outside, the rain kept falling, and the jazz tune in the background breathed softly through the night. A young couple came in, raindrops still clinging to their coats, their hands still intertwined. They sat at the table by the window, ordered 2 cups of hot cocoa, and laughed quietly. A small sound, yet enough to fill the entire room. He watched them, and inside, a tender feeling stirred something between longing and gratitude. He looked down at his cup. The steam had faded, leaving only a calm surface reflecting the gentle light above. The woman smiled at him. "Coffee on a rainy night shouldn't be rushed," she said. "Let it cool slowly like memories. The longer you let them sit, the softer they become." A soft breeze passed through, rustling the curtain, and the small wind chime by the door rang gently, its notes mingling with the sound of rain, like a distant greeting from somewhere far away. He whispered to himself, "Maybe she's still listening to the music somewhere." The woman nodded gently. "The ones we love never really leave, you know. They just move to a place we can only reach when our hearts are still enough." Mr. William sat in silence, his hands gently wrapped around the coffee cup. All of a sudden, he felt the urge to speak, not to complain, but simply so that someone could listen to the pieces of life he had carried this far. On this rainy night, he realized he wasn't lonely anymore. Outside, the rain was easing, but inside the cafe, warmth had quietly returned, soft, tender, and so very close. And now, let every thought drift away, like the rain fading beyond the eaves, like the scent of coffee slowly dissolving into the breeze. When the drizzle thinned, he rose to leave. The lady wrapped up an extra slice of banana bread for him and said, "For breakfast tomorrow. Who knows, it might rain again." He smiled, taking the small paper bag. "If it does, I'll come back." The little bell above the door chimed as he stepped out. The air after the rain was cool and clean. The last drops fell from the awning, one by one, disappearing into the damp street below. He opened his umbrella, looked up at the grey sky and murmured, "Margaret, you see that? The coffee here is wonderful." A soft breeze passed, carrying the scent of coffee mingled with the fragrance of rain. He paused and closed his eyes. For a moment, he felt a gentle touch on his shoulder, so light it could have been the wind, or perhaps a memory. Across the street, a bus rode by, its windows fogged, and for the briefest instant, he thought he saw someone sitting by the window, a familiar figure, kind eyes, silver hair tilted toward the rain. Then the bus moved on, leaving only a trace of mist behind. He smiled, not sadly this time, but with a quiet peace, his heart light as the steam of coffee dissolving into air. Back home, he placed the little bag of bread on the table, turned on the soft yellow lamp, and brewed another cup of coffee. From the old radio came the same song he'd heard when leaving the clinic, Louis Armstrong's warm, gravelly voice. What a wonderful world! He looked out the window, where the last drops of rain clung to the glass, catching the light like tiny stars. Softly, he whispered, "Yes, It truly is a wonderful world. Then he sat down, closed his eyes. The music faded into the gentle hush of rain outside. And within the warmth of that quiet night, he no longer felt alone. Somewhere within the passing rain, Margaret had walked beside him, just for a little while, but long enough for his heart to find peace again. Sometimes we don't have to go far to find those we've lost. All it takes is a rainy night, a warm cup of coffee, and a small corner of the heart that still keeps a place for memory. In the small room, Mr. William had fallen asleep on his chair. The coffee cup was still warm, a thin wisp of steam drifting beneath the soft yellow light. On the table, a neatly wrapped bag of banana bread rested beside the old radio that hummed a gentle tune from the past. Outside, the streetlights shimmered through the window pane, reflecting like fragments of lingering memories. Everything seemed to pause as if the world itself was holding its breath, letting him dream in peace. In that dream, there was the sound of rain, faint, distant, and through the rain, a familiar figure sat by the window, a coffee cup in her hand, smiling softly. "You're home, William? Take another sip, it's still warm." He didn't say a word. He simply sat beside her, listening to the rain. Still slow, still gentle, just like it used to be. Tonight, while the rain still falls somewhere out there, let the memories take you just a little further. No need to force yourself to forget, nor to hold on too tightly. Just smile, knowing that the one you love is still somewhere on a peaceful night just like this. Now, close your eyes. Let your shoulders loosen. Take a deep breath. If it's raining outside, let that sound lull you to sleep. Let this night drift by as softly as coffee steam, and know that wherever you are, someone, somewhere, far away, is still smiling with you in the same rain. Sleep well and dream of the calmest days. Tom wiped away his tears and stood up. He stepped out onto the porch. The cold wind swept past, but the golden light of the lamp remained steadfast amid the white snow. He spoke softly, as if replying to the one who had gone. "I promise, Mr. Harold, this light will never go out." He gazed down the snow-covered street. In the distance, the sun was slowly rising, warm, gentle, shining down on that golden porch light. The light blended together from the sky, from the lamp, from memories. No boundary remained between those who had left and those who stayed. Only the light and the love remained. By now, you are probably lying on your familiar bed, blanket pulled up to your chest, and the little room around you immersed in soft darkness. If you listen carefully, you might still hear the wind outside the porch or leaves brushing lightly against the window, like Harold's lamp softly singing in the breeze. A quiet reminder that love never truly goes out. Perhaps throughout our lives, we have all lit such lights. A light waiting for a child to return. A light for a loved one far away. Or simply, a light to warm our own hearts through the long night. And you know what? No matter how many seasons pass, no matter how grey our hair becomes, that light remains silent, gentle, needing no witness as long as it still shines. So tonight, before you close your eyes, take a deep, slow breath. Feel the warmth spreading from your chest outward. Sleep now. The light is still on, and you are still loved. May you have a peaceful sleep where beautiful memories softly glow, like that golden porch light never extinguished.